I'd like to welcome everybody to today's episode of Demystify Selling with Microsoft. And I'm super excited for our discussion today and my talk with Jacob Welch. So, Jacob, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just by way of background, I met Jacob a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, out in Las Colinas, and we had this fascinating discussion about build versus buy. And that's really where we came up with this topic. We said, we really need to share this with Microsoft partners at large. So we came up with the idea of having a discussion around how Microsoft and partners solve customer problems in today's Copilot world. So that'll form the basis of our discussion today. But Jacob, before we get started, maybe you could introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob Welch. As Rob said, I am a digital specialist on the enterprise manufacturing team here at Microsoft. So I work hand in hand with my field counterparts. So SSPs would be one term that's used. A field seller would be another one. They've had a couple of name changes over the years, but essentially we work hand in hand with them going through the MSEM model. MSEM being that Microsoft Customer Engagement Methodology. So a lot of folks got familiar with that when I met Rob that week. And we sit in the sort of opportunity generation and qualification arm in the listen and consult phase of that methodology. So really doing a lot of, prospecting, cold outreach, warm outreach, being that scale motion for the field so that they can close more business and we can get increased deal velocity across the board.
Great. And then, so you sit in the SMC organization. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, so we fall under SMC, but I work with enterprise clients. So there's a digital specialist role just like mine for SMC, but the enterprise team also falls under SMC. So a little weird on the org chart, but yeah, that's what we
Got it.
see.
Okay, very good. Well, great. And then what types of customers will you be working with typically? It sounds like manufacturing, but I just want to validate that, you play in that sort of industry specific space.
Absolutely, yeah. So all manufacturing. So we've got everything
Okay.
from defense contractors, subcontractors, aerospace to process, discrete manufacturers, some distributors. So anywhere where Microsoft has classified them as a manufacturing industry, that's who we're working with.
And I think I just want to dig in on that for just a second before we get into the meat of our conversation is that one of the things that I think is really important for partners to understand is that when they bring industry specific knowledge, like in your case, manufacturing, that's incredibly valuable because, I assume you work with a number of different partners, and when they bring that sort of specific knowledge to bear, that's really beneficial for you.
Yes, I mean, especially industry-specific knowledge, like you said. I work with a few partner organizations right now. So Jeff Winters is one that I've worked with quite a bit. He used to be here at Microsoft, and then when we kind of had some cuts on our end on the industry team, so we lost some of that utility, he got picked up by Hitachi. So I love working with partners that have an industry line that I can leverage in those customer conversations, open up a few doors to the business and say, hey, we've got this expert, want to just get time with them and they'll go over their perspective on the industry. That opens up a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities if they can bring an industry expert to a conversation, for sure.
I love that. Yeah, because I mean, and just the ability to scale for you too has got to be important because, yes, you can have these manufacturing specific conversations, but you've got a number of accounts that you have to have them across. It's not just one, you're not just dedicated to one account, I imagine. You've got a whole bunch that you have to cover.
Absolutely. 77 total accounts for me personally, right? So
Right.
that will be up or down, could be 20 more, could be 20 less, but yeah, we're covering multiple field sellers, huge swaths of territory. So yeah, the scale motion is critically key.
Right. And I want to pause there and make sure partners understand that, folks like Jacob, they, yes, they have to have industry specific knowledge, but they have to spread that knowledge across dozens and dozens, in your case, 77 accounts. That's not possible for one person, And so it's important when you're talking to somebody like Jacob that you share that industry specific knowledge that Jacob can leverage. So, I mean, in an average day, I mean, I imagine you're talking to one, two, five, 10 partners that can help you sort of scale that. Is that true?
Yeah, increasing from that event. So I would say before, Ultimate Partner, we kind of knew the partners that we knew. The
Yeah.
beauty of that event was I did a ton of networking there. So yeah, over the last couple of weeks, I've had probably 3 to 5 interactions with partners a week
Yeah.
saying, hey, this is on these 6 accounts. I need you guys' help here. Like, this is a good fit here, and really starting to target specifically with partners where to lean so that I can kind of scale my efforts across, that swath of territory.
Awesome. Awesome. And then just a couple more questions on this. And one that would be really beneficial, I think, to hear from you is when you meet a partner for the first time, what are the things you're looking to hear or learn about from that partner specific to their business?
Yeah, so I think for me personally, since I'm Dynamics Power Platform, are
Yeah.
they a dynamic? Do they have Dynamics use cases and customers? Right. First and
Okay.
foremost, that's what I want to know. Are they a Microsoft only shop? This came up in your session when we were there on site, right? Like, it's very important for me to know if I introduce you to a customer, is there potential that they're going to go outside of Microsoft for that solution, right?
Right.
So that would be another one, I think. And then where I've started to really talk to partners is, what is your go live rate? Like, what is that percentage? Is it 80% on time on budget, 90% on time on budget?
Oh,
Customers care about, have they done this before? And is my project that I sign, this SOW with them, is it going to come in on time on budget? Is my CEO going to be happy? So that's a big one. I have started asking customers in my normal discourse of like, what is your guys' successful go right rate? What does that look like?
got it. Got it. Yeah. And just to dig deep on the solution designation, is it important to you that the partners either have or in flight to get their solution designation from the Microsoft AI Cloud Partner Program?
Yeah, absolutely it is, because the AI talk track, we're opening so many doors with that conversation. So if you don't
Right.
have a marketable or at least use case for how you're injecting AI into those solutions, and we'll get more into that on the build versus buy story, like,
Yeah.
it's going to make it very difficult for me to leverage you in that engagement when we've predicated most of these opportunities on the basis that we're talking about generative AI.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's a great place for us to transition, I think, into that talk. And again, just to remind people, it was when you and I met, we had a build versus buy discussion. And for me, it was just fascinating your take on that and kind of how you envision the world going forward. So I'd love to have you just share that and sort of talk through that, and then we'll ask some questions after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, yeah, I've only been at Microsoft for a little over a year and a half. So May of 2022 is when I came on board. Previously came from Gartner, and for the most part, a lot of the solutioning that Microsoft would do for customers, for most cases, was done inside of Azure, right? If you had to
Yeah.
connect different data sources or whatever, it was done inside Azure. Power Platform could do quite a bit for folks that were already on Dynamics or already using Microsoft Office, but a lot of that still needed to be devved in Azure. And we're in this unique scenario now with all of these pre-built copilots, whether it's M365 Copilot, Dynamics Copilot, as Microsoft's going through multiple rebrandings as well. So now it's Microsoft Copilot for sales and service,
Yeah.
and that's coming off of Ignite. The point being, these things are built in out of the box now, and so there's
Right.
a new sort of conversation we have to have with customers on kind of adding in the question of, well, do you want to build this or buy this? Like, what are the pros and cons of that, and does it fit this specific use case? Maybe of the 3 use cases you have, 2 of them should be built and 1 should be bought because this one's ready to go and it fits what you want to do. It's not a conversation I think customers are used to. It's not a conversation the sellers are used to. There's a lot of internal back and forth we're having internally on the account teams, because there's like 14 of us on one enterprise account, right? There's
Yeah.
a digital specialist in Dynamics and Power Platform and Modern Work and security, and so everyone wants to have that conversation. We need to focus those efforts, and so we started to build a build versus buy scenario within the sales teams to ask customers, like, have you thought about just buying it out of the box?
Right.
And most of them don't, and there's still some mystery around roadmap and all of that, and we're getting better at it. But that's sort of the crux of the conversation that I've been talking with folks is, you need to have all of the information before you engage yourself into an 18-month Azure engagement, when maybe
Right.
that feature will be available in 4 months and you just need to wait 4 months, and then it'll be available within the workload that you already have. So it's a unique scenario that's been brought on because of all of the pre-built copilots.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think you make a good point that it's not just in any one area. Like it's not just specific to Dynamics and or modern work or security. It's across the entire platform. Yeah,
Yeah, and then each workload has like different uh, GA availability, right? So we're
right.
talking about Sales Copilot right now. GA, I think, is Q3, right? So coming up on the next quarter.
Yeah.
Dynamics has been in public preview and GA for some stuff, but some features are in private preview or public preview. So it, the sellers in general have to be very up to date on what those features are, but so do partners, because we're going to be having these conversations with customers. Your folks need to know internally, if you do both Azure and Dynamics, which does it make sense to do? Wait 3 months and engage with this customer when it's available and build it and configure it that way? Or do we do the 12, maybe 8 to 18 month Azure, solution where it's high dev and engineers and,
Right.
yeah. So across the board, everyone's got to kind of get up to speed on that.
Interesting. And I imagine, if you think about it, not just from the different platforms, but look at it from the commercial tenant versus the GCC versus the GCC high. So the complexity of this conversation just compounds in my mind.
Yeah, the GCC high environment is crazy as well, right? So what's available in commercial is not necessarily available in GCC high, and I'm
Yeah.
starting to get more involved with those teams and figuring out, like, there's talks that maybe there will be Copilot in GCC high eventually. What does
Yeah.
that roadmap look like? How do we talk to customers about that? And then, again, do our partners know that? We know this
Right.
because we're getting the internal memos. We need to be communicating regularly with our partner group so that if they don't know, they can start prepping for those things, so that when we're GA, they have a solution already ready to go for those customers that want to take advantage.
That's such a great point that you make about, when you're talking to partners or when partners are reaching out to you, is that you're exploring all avenues of the conversation with the customer. At the end of the day, we're all about solving the customer problem, delivering a business outcome. And to your point, is the better thing for the customer to have an 18-month dev cycle or wait 3 months for the copilot to come out? It's such an interesting conversation.
Yeah, another layer of nuance to it is also with Ignite having the announcements they made there. It could be that you buy an out-of-box solution, you do a little bit of tweaking with Copilot Studio inside of the Power Platform, and then if it's not quite there, maybe 6-8 months down the road, like, okay, this is great, we wanted to do more. Now you dev on top of it, so it's not like you have to pick a path and then you're stuck to it either. So that
Right.
it's a very nuanced conversation that has to happen, and everyone kind of has to work together to figure out what's best for customers, what's best for them, and what's best for Microsoft. Yeah.
Right. You bring up, I mean, I didn't even think of that when you were saying that. Is the whole, Copilot Studio and, tweaking the out of the box Copilot or configuring it, I guess might be a better way
Yeah.
to say it, so that it's more in line with solving the customer problem versus the full out or full development cycle where it's, yeah, who knows where you'll be in 18 months with Copilot, right?
Yeah. And so the fear, and the reason I was trying to talk to people about it, is we just don't want to build solutions for customers that they will be able to have out of the box a year or two from now, right?
Right.
Because that's frustrating, right? Then their Azure consumption goes up, their dev cycles go up, their capex was burned building this thing that maybe if they just been a little more patient, or if they were aware, maybe they weren't even aware of it, right? That it was on the roadmap for an 8-month release. Like they could have saved all that capex, all that Azure spend, and did it in Dynamics or did it in modern work or whatever the workload is. So
Well, I mean, and that is such a critical point, I think, from a partner perspective is as a partner, are you prepared to have those discussions? Do you, one, understand what Copilot can bring both today out of the box and what the roadmap looks like? So I mean, that's a heavy lift on its own. You think about just that discussion, but it leads me into the next point, which I think the sort of near term opportunity for partners in prepping their customers for Copilot in sort of a readiness discussion. So, yes, Copilot is fantastic and it could solve some big problems for us. But if you're not ready for it, yeah, maybe dev is the right way. You just haven't, because you haven't cleaned your environment, or you haven't
Yeah.
cleaned but prepared your environment for the
Yeah.
Copilot success.
And getting to the cloud, right? There's still
Right.
some laggards in industry that are like, no, we're not going to the cloud. Well,
Yeah,
you can't take advantage of those opportunities as well, right? There are
right.
some connectors inside, ways that you can gateway into on-prem systems, but it's not as robust and not as fluid as it would be in a cloud environment. So this
Right.
may be a catalyst to, you might see some of those folks move from AX and GP, and they'll finally make the move to, to F&O on the dynamic side.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do some data migration and cleanup when you're doing that. So there's enough business for everyone. We just need to really figure out, what are the best solutions for folks when we're talking to them.
Right. Yeah. So one hand, you're looking at the readiness to move, and I'm going to say lift and shift, but to move that data into the cloud and be prepared for Copilot. And then as you're thinking about solving those problems, can we use an out of the box solution? If it's 80% of the way there today, and we can see we have line of sight to the 100%, I mean, to me, as a partner, I'd want to be considering guiding my customer, at least making them aware of the options.
Yeah, and with all of these things, change management's been the biggest part. That's, every organization struggles with. We struggle with it internally, right? We've changed. My role has expanded in what we were doing, and the amount of accounts went from 100 something to 77. Right, we're getting more granular in what we do. There's
Yeah.
change management processes and things that happen internally that are tough, even for Microsoft. We see it with our customers as well. Prime example was a lot of our customers already had D365 for sales. Well, it
Mhm.
was just default on for Sales Copilot. So people started seeing it, but they have no training. They didn't know, what it functionally does. It's not a
Right.
net new opportunity, so there's very little, to be honest, like interest for a lot of folks, whether it's partners or Microsoft or both, to get in there and show people how to use it.
Right.
So, and then internally, we've seen some of our um, CSAMs and customer service folks. There's less of them now, so it's a lot harder for us to do that. So partners that are offering to get people up to speed, run workshops on increasing adoption and
Yeah.
focusing on the change management aspect of all of this, of finding those, 10 to 12 people in a sales org that are really, really leaning in, make them train the trainers, and then they can evangelize that across their businesses. Those partners are going to win if they're willing to do that work and help folks use the solutions that they build.
Right. And I mean, it makes me think, when we talk about sales and D365 as an example, one of the challenges I've always seen customers struggle with is hygiene. It's good data in equals good data out. Bad data in, bad data out.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
so
and
good.
a lot of that is process, right?
Yeah.
So these technologies are great. Copilot is fantastic. You have to change processes to work to the benefit of the technology. Where I think, the last few years, like if you had a good tech stack, it was okay. That stuff would kind of just work itself out. CRM's always been, and I've seen it here at Microsoft. I haven't had too much experience with CRM systems over my short career in sales, but getting sellers to put stuff in the CRM has always been the problem, right?
Yeah.
So Sales Copilot makes it easier, but you've got to remember to hit the plugin. Hit the plugin, then
Right.
it'll ingest the data. So there's process changes that have to happen for customers to use it. We're using it internally every single day, but I'd say the change management aspect, if partners can handle that and include that in their SOWs, include that in their what they're going to offer customers, you're going to win a ton of business if you can help them scale adoption of the solutions that you're promising to customers. You're going to win all day.
Right. I think you highlighted such an important point there that I think maybe partners don't traditionally spend as much time. We're all technology focused, and how can the technology solve the problem? As we move into this co-pilot world and AI world in general, I think that, as you pointed out rightly, is the processes are going to be critical. So ensuring that your processes are sound and that the technology aligns to your processes, or vice versa, your process aligns to the technology, whatever makes sense. But I think as partners, to your point, this is a big opportunity. I think that it speaks to the businesses, or us as partners, having to change our business to meet the technology where it's going.
Yeah, and just to double down on it, like the changes are happening so fast, they can't keep track of it.
Right.
So whether it's Microsoft or the partners, we have to be that advisor to them to help them like, hey, this stuff has changed. Like, let's get in there and help you. You should do this process now. And what like some of the conversations I had early on when Sales Copilot was we would just use it and then show them the outputs. This is
Yeah.
why you guys should care. This is why you guys should use this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
On with the customer and show them the recording. It doesn't have, you don't have to reinvent the wheel of change management, but just find the folks internally that care to be
Right.
early adopters. I was one of the first people to grab a Windows phone when there were no applications for it way back in, the earlier sort of 2000s. I think it was 2008 or something, and 2009, and there was no apps because no one had devved anything for it yet.
I feel like you and I were the only two on the phone.
maybe, but it's find that person in your org. There's a bunch of them, right? Those folks that are super early adopters
Yeah.
and they're super pro change. Partners need to help the business decision makers that they work with to find and isolate those folks and spin them up and get them as part of those early onboarding. If they can do that, they're going to have no adoption problems, right?
Right. Really become the advocate inside the business to help
Exactly.
win, to solve the business problem and to help the sort of population at large, the company at large, to adopt the technology. I think that's a phenomenal idea and a phenomenal approach for partners to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, as we're coming to the sort of wrapping up this conversation, I just want to circle back to what we talked about earlier and maybe have you share a couple sort of insights from your perspective on what makes a great partner in your sort of Dynamics Power Platform world.
Yeah. So great partners are ones that are sharing. A lot of partners are doing great, whether it's webinars, they're putting out industry topics. We need those. So I'd say first off, like good partners, I know who they are because they've reached out. So I physically know they exist. I think I brought that up in your class. Like there's 400,000 of you. There's like 40 of us on our team. There's no way I know who all of you are. So like partners, like you got to hit LinkedIn, find us by the workloads that you serve. So if you're data in Azure, Microsoft data in Azure, find the specialists, find the field sellers, like get out there and find those folks, ask for time. And then we need collateral. We need use cases, reference stories that you've done for customers, right? Customers are always asking us, well, have they done this before, right? If it's a Salesforce compete or if it's a Oracle, switch over to F&O, how did it go? Was the customer happy? So reference stories, and then webinars, events, marketing collateral. Like Microsoft gives us stuff. All the marketing collateral, give it to me, all of it. Like I'll fill my calendar with all of your events and I'll send those out to folks so that they can hear those insights in your success stories from you, and I'll just send it to them. So I think those kind of three things, like if you're being proactive and sending out, that marketing collateral, those customer wins and customer use stories, find the digital specialist for your industry, for your account type, whether it's SMC or enterprise, and then thirdly, just those references in marketing collateral, super key.
Great. So now we've heard the good side. Give me one thing or two things that you find frustrating that partners do. They're like, look, this is just a non-starter for me. When you approach it like this, it throws up the red flags for me.
Yeah, you brought it up in your session, Ashley. So it was we do everything, right? Like, got it. You can technically do everything, but where's the sweet spot?
Yeah.
Where can I compartmentalize you in my brain of when I'm talking to a customer about a particular problem, you're in that bucket of solution providers. Too often, everyone's trying to fight and win market share, so they say we do everything, but that's not helpful to me. I don't know where to bucket you. I'm not going to remember to use you. So I think like too vague.
Right. So it's really be clear on what your, as Microsoft refers to as your superpower is. What's the one thing that you'll go toe to toe with anybody, and that I know if I were to bring you in on this thing, you're going to knock it out of the park, is really what you're saying, if I'm hearing you right. Be clear on that.
That and who's your ideal customer?
Yeah, good point.
So I have partners that say, hey, we really don't do well with process manufacturers. Like we just, the chemical and adding their they add their part and it moves on. We're not very good there. We're very good at discrete. We're very good in retail. So like for them, I just know avoid process manufacturers with
Yeah,
them.
right.
That's too easy. So also like I'd say your superpower and your ideal customer.
That's great. That
Yeah.
is awesome. I love that, Jacob. Well, Jacob, thank you very much for spending time with us today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It was equally as fun the first time we met. So I'm glad we were able to do this today and share it with everybody. And if anybody does want to get a hold of you, what's the best place to find you?
LinkedIn. I am on there almost every day. So Jacob Welch, digital specialist should be the job title there. You'll see me in a nice knitted gray, sort of cardigan on there with the
Okay.
with the mohawk. So it should be really easy to figure out which one's me.
Okay.
But yeah, find me on LinkedIn, and we'll get you connected with the right folks.
Awesome. Well, Jacob, thanks again. I really enjoyed the conversation.